Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. And today we were talking email marketing and more specifically, what a welcome sequence is, why you need them, and what should be included in them. I am obsessed with email marketing, and so I'm really excited about this conversation that I have with Sarah Cook. And I think you're going to love it too. It's really specific. She's going to give you really specific information on what should be in your email sequence so that you can take action on it right away. You might remember Sarah if you've been a longtime listener of this podcast. She was with me way back in episode 6, I believe. I'll link it up in the show notes, but she joined me to talk about copywriting and your homepage. So also a great one to check out if you want to evaluate the copy on your homepage. Now, Sarah Cook is a copywriter and content writer for the health and wellness community, having attained her naturopathic doctorate as well as certification in medical writing, digital marketing, direct response copywriting, and as a As a story brand certified guide, Sarah uses words to take health and wellness business from ignored to adored. Sarah offers copywriting services and a content marketing monthly subscription through wellnesswebsitepro.com. Now, she is, like I said, going to give you some amazing tactical, like real down and dirty stuff that you can do. So I hope that you'll listen to this episode if you don't have a welcome sequence already. And if you do, then this is just going to be a great time for you to refresh it, to take a look at it, to take a look at the effectiveness of it, and maybe make some tweaks. She might give you some ideas for things to update and change. So I love email marketing. I love this episode. I think you guys are going to love it too. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our brand new Patreon membership. And I think you're going to love it. I hope you check it out. With as little as $5 a month, you get access to a digital worksheet for all of the episodes that we have going on this month. So for example, with this episode, you would have a worksheet that's going to walk you through all of the things that she's talking about in this episode so that you can take action. And then we have other plans, but the most expensive one is $30 a month. We have live Q&As. We have ways for you to get unstuck and keep moving forward. I really hope that you will head on over to thefirstclick.net/Patreon. Check it out. That's Patreon. Check it out and see if there's a plan that fits for you to help you keep moving forward. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. hello@thefirstclick.net. I am here for you. And I hope that you will become a patron and join me. I can't wait to get to know more about your organization and the people and the community and the concerns that you serve and all the good that you're doing in this world. But for now, let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hey, everybody, please join me in welcoming Sarah Cook to the podcast. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. This is your second time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sammy.
So I'd love if you could just kick off. I know we're talking email marketing, specifically welcome sequences today, but I would love if you would just start by saying, overall, why you think email marketing is such a great tool in marketers' toolbox.
Oh, absolutely. Email marketing is probably one of the really best tools for marketing. Nowadays, I think there is just so much information. There's just a lot of noise online. And so a lot of times businesses and organizations, they think that they need to show up on social media, which yes, like that can be a helpful tool as well. But if you compare kind of the actual return on investment from something like showing up with your message on social media versus showing up with emails, statistically, it's actually much more powerful to connect with your audience on emails. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One is it is actually more direct. There's a higher likelihood that a person is going to see that email from you in their inbox, versus a little bit more hit or miss on social media. And, you actually own your email list. So you're not so much at the at what is it called? The risks of other algorithm changing and things like that on social media. You have complete control over your list and your subscribers. And it's just a very kind of a more personal way to connect, that can be, really powerful. I work more with small businesses, wellness businesses and practitioners than nonprofits. But what I've seen in what we can do with emails, and, we'll talk about the welcome sequence and how to nurture and promote and kind of strike a nice balance. But with email marketing, we're actually, able to do some really powerful promotions, get some really good results that I think when we look at nonprofits would translate into really successful donation drives, for example. So
absolutely.
It's a really, really powerful tool.
I couldn't agree with you more on everything you said. But we are here specifically to talk about a welcome sequence. And so why don't we start off by, just in case people aren't sure about what a welcome sequence is, like, what is that and why is that something that should be part of your email marketing plan?
Yeah, I mean, what a welcome sequence is, it's a series of emails that your organization writes one time and puts them on automation so that as soon as a new subscriber joins your list, they will automatically receive this welcome sequence of emails. So it's really nice because you put in the work up front. It runs on automation. So you only, it takes a little bit of work on your part, and then the benefits can go on forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And the power of the welcome sequence is it's usually triggered from an action that somebody takes. And so the open rates on a welcome sequence are usually much higher.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sorry you had asked, why is it so important? I didn't really answer that yet, but that's one of the reasons is that, when people initially, I like to look at email marketing, it's all about relationships. Mm-hmm. And so we need to kind of continue to come back to this. Remember that these are people, and
right.
they're coming onto the list at a certain point in time where usually they're at a stage of that relationship with your organization of just being curious. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe it depends on how people join your list. Like maybe they've given a small donation, or maybe they've asked for some information from you, or maybe they've just specifically said, I want email updates. But whatever the reason, it's kind of like, I mean, I never did the bar scene much, but I think it's a really good analogy. Whereas you first meet somebody, and if it's in the bar, maybe it's somebody looks at you and just like winks across the room. And now the ball's in your court. And what are you going to do? So like, are you going to go over and buy that person a drink? Are you going to continue the conversation? Or are you just going to look at the floor or turn the other way? And so I think that's kind of what it's like. A person makes some sort of gesture, like they're choosing to be on your email list for some reason. And that's like the wink across the room. And now the ball's in your court. And what are you going to do? Are you going to start to nurture that relationship? Or are you just going to drop the ball?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, we're at this beginning, like really critical moment actually of starting to build a relationship with your new subscriber. And they're feeling curious. They're kind of ready. Is this really perfect window of opportunity?
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple different types, like maybe they gave you a donation, or maybe they signed up to get, notifications on your current affairs, what's going on. Maybe they signed up to volunteer, whatever. And so is it important for organizations to come up with multiple welcome sequences for those different kinds and different types of entry points?
That's an interesting question that, I definitely think that would have to be considered on a case-by-case basis, although probably as a general rule, to me, I think that the ideas that I teach about kind of what topics to go into a welcome sequence would probably be universally applicable, so that maybe there could be 3 or 4 different ways people might get on the list. They might get a single email kind of confirming that initial reason.
Right.
So, thank you for your small first donation, right? Or thank you for requesting information from us. So whatever the initial contact, you fulfill that in one email, but then the maybe you would have 4 or 5 other emails that are the actual welcome sequence that go out after that, regardless of what was the initial reason they joined.
Okay. Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's critical to hit them where, they came in for a reason. So let's acknowledge that reason. But then, ultimately
Yes.
the mission driven piece of, and we're going to go into the topics right now, but, what you talk about and the rest of it is important. You might need to tweak and refine, but as a general rule of thumb, you can take these next steps no matter how people come to you.
I think so. Yeah. And I know it might be a little bit different with nonprofits and the reasons that people are getting on the list, because with small businesses, a lot of times it's giving some free download, right, or some kind of, free content. And in that situation, there might be 4 different free downloads people could request, and they would get that one, and then they would all go into that same welcome sequence regardless.
Yeah. And the key thing I want to make sure to mention here is I don't want you as an organization to get overwhelmed and be like, oh my gosh, now I have to write like all these sequences for all of these things. Like the important thing, I think what you're saying, Sarah, is like just get started with one main sequence, and then maybe you can develop it as you see things kind of changing and growing. But I think it's important to just get started so that you can start measuring and start engaging and interacting and taking advantage of the power of email marketing. And then it can always be an ever growing, blossoming part of your process that you add to it as you can.
Yeah, I would definitely keep it simple at first. I see no reason to write more than one welcome email sequence.
Right. Okay. So let's jump into the meat of this, which is, what are the different types of emails that should be in your sequence? Kind of what are you talking about in each one of these emails, so that people can kind of run through and create these themselves?
Yeah, sure. So kind of the overarching goal here is that we really want to set the stage, start to build a relationship so that subscribers over time will really just become lifelong advocates for your organization or repeat donors. Okay. And so that the way we do that, again, it's about remembering this is a real person and kind of following the rules of relationship. And so, but maybe what I can do is I have 4 specific topics that I think are really helpful to cover in a welcome sequence. And so maybe we can just go through those 4. Does that
perfect? Yeah, that sounds great.
Good? Yeah. So the one of the topics that really has to be in there is an introduction to who you are. And so the thing is, you cannot assume that just because somebody made a small donation or just because they've asked to join your list, that doesn't necessarily mean they fully understand who you are and what you do. So having one email in the welcome sequence that just reiterates your mission, your vision, like some of that foundational messaging of who you are, maybe a little bit of kind of what successes that your track record of impact, right? Some of the things that the organization has achieved. So it's kind of just a introductory, making sure everybody's on the same page and understands who it is that they've just connected with. And this, it depends, of course, on the organization and how big it is. Like, I think it'd be really nice for this to specifically come signed from a person, like making it a little personal, whoever that whoever it makes sense for that person to be, whether it's the executive director but that it's like a personal message from our executive director, for example, right? And it's like, we're so grateful for you to have joined us. This is who we are. This is what we're about. This is some of our successes we've had. Thanks for coming on board. So a little bit of personal touch and introduction.
Yeah, I think this is critical in the nonprofit space because just like you said, we cannot assume that people understand what we're about. And somebody could have come in because they attended your run walk and maybe a friend brought them along. But then just to your point, you have that missed opportunity of retaining them as a longer donor because maybe they haven't emotionally bought in yet to your mission. Or maybe I adopted a pet from your organization. And so now I want to give you a little extra. But I don't understand that you guys also have a whole nother program that rehabilitates troublesome dogs, whatever it might be, like all of those things that might continue to bring me back for more. I think that's super critical. And so I love that you brought all that up.
Yep. And that can just be in one email. So number 2 is at least one story of impact. So stories are just extremely powerful. And I think especially in the nonprofit sector to demonstrate, what kind of impact you're having. And so stories, I think a lot of organizations maybe do have these. They can be in writing. It could be like specifically written for this email sequence, or it could be something that you already have written up on a blog, for example, or maybe it's in video form, which is even more powerful.
Yeah.
You have something like that where there's just a video example of like, here's something that we did. And I know a lot of organizations are doing so many different things, but that's okay. Like one example, because it really grounds, it just connects with people emotionally, and really shows a little bit deeper than just, this is our mission. This is like on the ground, what we're doing. Here's an example.
And would you have this one coming from the voice of so if it's somebody that was personally impacted, if it's a family or, like somebody from the community or whatever, would you kind of have it come from the voice of that person? Or would you still have this email come, written from the organization talking about that experience?
You can do it either way, but if you can get the person who has been impacted, interview them, I would say that would be the best. I think that would really connect more, kind of touch the heartstrings more.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I want to bring up at this point too, because I think it's kind of obvious maybe to you and I, but in these emails, especially these first 2, it's specifically talking about impact. There is no ask for donation or for anything from the reader, correct?
Correct. Yes. I maybe I should have maybe prefaced, but so there are really kind of 2 different approaches to take with a welcome sequence. One is more promotional or more asking in this case versus an approach that's more nurturing. And so what I'm actually talking through now is more of a nurture approach to a welcome sequence. The approach that's more sales, promotion, asking, I think is going out of favor, because if we go back to the idea in the bar, like, oh, someone winks at you, what are you going to do? Are you going to run over and say, hey, you want to get married?
Right.
That's kind of like that's kind of the old way. Like a lot of digital marketers used to do that. Someone gets on the list and you start instantly promoting something and asking for them to give more or buy more. It's a little bit too much too soon. And I mean, I've actually done sequences like that before and not seen a whole lot of result from it because people aren't quite ready, right? So the concept that I'm teaching here is it's a little bit more of the long game. And it's more about, we use the welcome sequence to nurture, to connect, to establish a foundational relationship that's going to prime them to then give and to be interested in, what you're asking down the road. But we're really focused on delivering value and nurturing upfront.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. And I am in full agreement with you on that one too. Okay. So we've sent the mission and the vision through our executive director. We've shared an impact story. What's the third topic?
Okay. Perfect segue, because you want to send something helpful. Okay. So this, I think, maybe might be a little bit, a lot of organizations wouldn't think about this. But what I'm thinking here is that think about who are your advocates and your donors. Who are these people who are raising their hand and saying, I want to get information from you? They are people who want to feel like they're making a difference, right? Mm-hmm. And specifically for your organization, what types of people are they? How are they wanting to make a difference? So let me give an example here. So let's say it's an organization that collects plastic trash from the oceans and turns it into art, right? There is an organization that does that. So let's say that's what you do. Somebody has just, given a small donation, they're on your list. What else would those people be interested in knowing? What would be helpful for them in relation to what you do? So maybe they care about the environment, right? They care about reducing their use of plastics in their everyday life. So that could be your next email is like, look, we're on this mission to clean the oceans from plastic. Here are some things you can do every day to reduce your use of plastics. Yes. And now you're empowering them on an everyday basis, something they can do. And so you're not telling them, oh, you can be helpful by giving us money or donating, or giving your time, volunteering. You're not telling them this is how you can be helpful by helping our organization. No, you're actually giving them a valuable tip and tool of how they can make a difference in their everyday life in supporting your mission in a similar way.
Well, and one thing that I think is so cool about this is, but you're empowering them, you're making them feel useful. And this is the perfect time. I'm a big fan of we have to ask people to do what we want them to do. So, and you might tell me this is a bad idea, but I think this is also a perfect time to say, hey, share with your friends what you're doing to help us spread more of this, good ways to save single-use plastic, whatever it might be. Share this tip with your friends and family so you can even help us make a bigger impact. So they're more likely to share something like that because they also feel like they're empowering their friends and family than they will share a post about your organization saying, hey, give to these folks.
Yes. This is my number 4 topic.
Oh, sorry. I jumped the gun.
The beauty of it is you can weave these ideas together. So yes, because the number 4 thing you want to do is to ask them to take one more small step, a small ask, do something, take an action. And so yes, exactly what you're saying. Yes, you could ask them to share a social media post of yours. Yes, you could ask them to donate more money than what they already did, or to get on kind of a low monthly donation, right? You can ask them for a small next step, but you're absolutely right. Even in the email where you're being helpful, you can add that small ask where it's guys, get involved, take action, share these tips with your friends. That is a perfect strategy.
Yeah, because it shows your passion. It shows it's more authentic, and getting your donors and people that are on your list to broadcast about your organization gives you so much more authentic visibility. And I think to your point at the beginning, it's a long-term strategy, right? That's not going to turn into multiple donations right away, but that over time is going to help build much more visibility for your organization. And we know now, because things are so noisy, you need so many more touch points. But those touch points from somebody that I care about on, that's a friend of mine on social media, is so much more impactful than you speaking about it. As an organization. Yes.
So I think asking for a share is a perfect thing to include in the welcome sequence, which really it can be done along with any of the emails we've talked about already. And it can be done in a separate email of its own, where you're asking for a small additional, action for them to take.
Okay. So we have the 4 emails. I have a couple of questions specific to just in general, all of them. Yeah. So I know we've all gotten these more newsletter type emails from nonprofits, and it's just like this laundry list of all the things, right? So when it comes to writing these, how long should they be? And like, what are kind of your do's and don'ts of what to include and what not to include in these emails?
Right. So the newsletter style, I think, is less effective in getting people to take action because people's attention spans, it's just much easier for them to say, okay, this email is about one thing and it's asking me to do one thing. Yeah. And especially in this welcome sequence, we definitely do not want to overload the information. So we're going to keep each of the emails to a single topic and relatively short. And so one way I like to do this, because a lot of organizations might only be generally emailing their list even once a month, maybe once a week, right? Once a week to once a month. The welcome sequence goes every day. So somebody initially joins the list, and then they're going to get 4 or 5 emails once a day for 5 days. You can preface that. So with the very first email, it's fine to say, thanks for joining the list, or thanks for whatever reason they joined the list. Over the next few days, we're going to send a little bit more information so you can get to know what we're doing and give you some helpful tips, right? So that you give them a heads up, like, we're going to be sending you more information for the next few days. They get an email every day. And partly because of that, like, you need to keep each of those pretty short and sweet. And so that's why we just kind of focus on, one topic. You really don't even so as a general rule for email marketing, I recommend having one call to action in each email, where it's like, we're asking you in this email to do this one thing. For the welcome sequence, it's actually okay, especially for those first couple of emails where you're just introducing your organization or telling a story. In the welcome sequence, it's actually okay to not have a call to action there, because it's just this, it really is just this idea of like starting to get to know them and nurture and provide value.
Well, and your call to action in those emails might simply be links back to the website to dive deeper into that particular topic, right? As opposed to
the call to action is watch this video of our story. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And the only real call to action that's asking them to give might be just a small, like one of the last emails of the sequence that is like, the small ask of a monthly donation commitment, something like that.
Okay, so let's talk through some of the logistics of like setting this up, because you talked about automating. And so the beauty of this is, hopefully this is linked up to an email service provider. So when somebody donates, it automatically triggers, or when somebody signs up on your website, it automatically triggers. But what we don't want to do is send these types of things in bulk from our personal email, right?
Absolutely.
So, there's lots of different email software providers that are out there, and your CRM might have that capability as well. But it's really critical to set this up to trigger automatically, so you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, this definitely needs to be done through an email service provider. Yeah. Like the MailChimp, ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, one of those. And they're all going to have similar ability.
And a lot of them have nonprofit rates as well. So definitely check that out. I know ActiveCampaign for sure does. And to the point you made way earlier, the ROI on email marketing is huge. I think it's like for every dollar, it's like $39 or $41.
Yeah, $42 on every dollar spent is what the statistics are showing right now.
And it's been that way, and if not increasing, for the last, 4 or 5 plus years. So it's definitely not going away. So anything you're spending on your email service software is well worth the effort if you take action, right? If you continue to do it.
And I think a lot of those companies, they bill you based on how many subscribers. So I think that makes a lot of sense, because the fewer subscribers you have, the less money you're going to make off your list, right? So I think it's fair for them to charge more for more subscribers.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. So we've got our welcome sequence set up. We have it automated and ready to go. What do we do? Like, what are kind of some of your quick best practices for once somebody's gone through the welcome sequence? Like, how do we continue to leverage our list after that? And I know this is like a whole big, long conversation that could probably be a separate podcast episode.
There's some broad concepts that are pretty easy to sum up, I think.
Yeah.
One thing is, so the very last email of your welcome sequence, I recommend it being somewhat of a transition email where you say, look, I know I've sent you a lot over the past few days, but here's what to expect going forward. And you just bullet out a little bit, like once a month, we're going to be sending you, or once a week. And you just give them a heads up to know what to expect by being on your list. And that is a good time to say, to even just foreshadow a little bit that, like, we're going to be sending you, helpful tips. We're going to be sending you stories of what we're doing. We're also going to be asking you to give. I mean, there's somehow to word, like, set the stage that through your ongoing email marketing, that they can expect for you to ask some stuff of them. So that's like the last transition email. And so then, best practices going forward is what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. So one is to just pick a schedule to commit to. So you want to choose, you're going to send weekly emails. Maybe you're going to send once every 2 weeks. Maybe you're going to send once a month, but whatever it is, you need to commit to that and make sure that you have a plan to execute on that. And you want to be consistent so that if it is every week, it always goes out at the same time, because people they do start to get accustomed to that. They know that it's going to come on Friday afternoon. Okay. And then they actually, even if they don't know they're looking forward to it, like once it shows up, they're like, oh yeah, I was looking forward to this. So the same time, every week or every month, whatever it is. And, the second thing to do with that ongoing emails, what we really just want to strike this balance between being helpful, providing value, and then asking. And so I think that, it really is about making sure that the emails that you send are useful. That's really that's the reason people are going to continue to want to open them. And the other thing that does, so this nurture, so every week or every month, being helpful, being useful, what that does is it actually kind of builds that relationship to give you permission to occasionally do a bigger, maybe a donation drive, like a stronger push, a stronger ask, because it's like you've done all that nurturing. Now, once or twice a year, you can do a big push that is asking them to give back for what you have given.
Well, and let's go back to your bar analogy, right? So let's say person winks at you, you go over, you have a quick, brief conversation, you have a drink together, you have a good time, and then you don't talk to them ever again. And then 6 months later, you happen to be at the same bar and you go up and say, hey.
And they're like, oh, I know you. Oh, let's get married now.
And they're like, wait, but you haven't talked to me in 6 months. Why do I care about what you have to say to me? It's like the same kind of situation.
You really have to look at it as a relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I think the beauty of email, and to your point of showing up regularly, you also stay top of mind with organizations. So if there's, you never know when somebody's ready to give again and what their motivations necessarily are. So by emailing them regularly and consistently and showing up in their inbox, you're showing them that, you're here, you're still here. You're still open, you're still doing great things, and their money is going to be wisely spent with you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I do
One
want.
last thing I will
Go
say.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine.
Yeah, in terms of, there's a whole probably long list of email best practices I could go into, but one of the things that makes a big difference in how successful email campaigns are is subject lines.
Mm-hmm.
Because so the subject line, they say it's like 64% of people decide if they're going to open an email or not just by reading the subject line, right?
100%, yeah.
And and so a lot of people, if it's just boring and they're just not going to open it, well, if people don't open your emails, then all of your efforts, have not been worth it. So subject lines really, they have to make people curious and kind of, I like to say it's like open some sort of story loop, like start to say something that people read that and are thinking, wait, what does that mean? Or what's the end of that sentence in the subject line? It makes them curious to actually click and open. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do a subject line that just gets people to kind of instantly, reflexively open without thinking. But that is, of all of the energy you put into writing an email, just don't drop the ball on the subject line.
Yeah, like don't have it be January newsletter.
Yeah.
Or January updates, right? Or like impact report, like, tease a little bit about what's in it. No, that's so good. One other thing that I think trips people up with email, and I just want to touch on this really quick, is, and get your thoughts, are people get, I think, depressed about open rates and unsubscribes. They think that it's not good enough to continue to make that investment. So could you maybe just talk on that briefly? I know depending on your organization and your industry, your open rate averages are going to be different, but
Right. And so I think the statistics across the board just for marketing emails is around the 20%.
Right.
Is typical for open rates. And so, if you're getting anything better than that, it's like you're doing really great. And I know people see that and think, God, only 20%. But partly in email marketing, you just have to accept that is a reality.
Right.
But here's a few things about that. For one, it's still valuable for them to see that in their inbox, even if they don't open it. Like you're saying, stay top of mind. They still see the name of who it's coming from. It's still a reminder, and they might not open every weekly or every monthly, but then occasionally they do. And I think plenty of people, they purposely stay on your list because they think like, occasionally I like to read the email.
Right.
So it's valuable even if they don't open it because they see it. Mm-hmm. And so I think the last statistic I saw on this was that Tuesdays are the day that get the highest open rates and the highest unsubscribe rates. And so then people are like, well, wait, do I want to send on Tuesdays or not? Right? Yes, you do, because it keeps your list clean. It keeps the people on your list who are going to engage and be interested. It's not worth having people on your list who don't care.
Yeah, if they unsubscribe, they're not going to donate to your organization anyway. Right. And if you're paying per subscriber, why do you want to pay for somebody who could care less? So I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Okay. So many good things. I hope that you guys will get on your welcome sequences right away. And when you do, let me know, because I want to subscribe to your list and check them out.
No pressure.
No pressure. But Sarah, if people want to learn more about you, and I know you have some great resources, how do they do that?
My website is wellnesswebsitepro.com. I have a resource. I'll send you the link if you want to share it in your show notes.
Absolutely.
Of 50 email subject lines to get better open rates. So that might be helpful for pretty much any business or organization. And I'm on Instagram. That's the same at Wellness Website Pro. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming back. Your previous episode, which was all about copywriting on your homepage, which was like one of our first ones that we did, is still our best performing podcast episode that we've ever done. So I'm sure this one will be up there too. We'll have to have a little competition with your
against myself.
Yeah. But yeah, check out the show notes. We'll have all of the resources linked there for you. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sammy. It's been fun.
Big thank you to Sarah. I know I got some great reminders from this episode. I hope that you learned a lot. I will have the resources that she mentioned, the subject line tips in the show notes, as well as some of the other software tools that we talked about. And I just want to really reiterate that a lot of these email software platforms offer nonprofit rates. So make sure you check out TechSoup for some of that, or just ask any software that you're contemplating using if they have a nonprofit rate. I know most of you are already doing that, but I just wanted to make sure I bring that up again. For now, I hope that you'll subscribe where you listen so that you don't miss an episode, and I will see you in the next one.